DiscerningHearts.com presents Pathway to Sacred Mysteries with Dr. David Fagerberg. Dr. Fagerberg is a professor of liturgical theology at the University of Notre Dame. He holds an MA from St. John's University, Collegeville, and an STM from Yale Divinity School, and a Ph.D. from Yale University. His books include Theological Prima, On Liturgical Asceticism, Consecrating the World, Liturgical Mysticism, and Liturgical Dogmatics. Pathway to Sacred Mysteries with Dr. David Fagerberg. I'm your host, Kris McGregor.
There are as many mystics as there are Christians. There are many evangelists as there are Christians. There are as many apostles as there are Christians. This is the lay apostolate that Vatican II spoke so forcefully about. The most overlooked document from the Second Vatican Council, I think, is Apostolicum Actio, the lay apostolate. This is what you're supposed to be doing. Well, no, I'll let Father take care of that. Sorry, you didn't sign on to sit in the bleachers. You're on the team. Now, this is how you are supposed to express in your life, which will be different from the way she expresses it in hers or he expresses it in his. In your life, this is how you manifest to others the mystery of Christ.
Oh, but my life is so mundane. I have nothing going on. I have to go home. I got to make dinner. I got to go to work. I got to come home. I got to maybe call my mom this week. I don't have the great mission or the great thing.
But it's perfect, because where is it supposed to be expressed? In the mundanus, in the mundane, in the world, in your cul-de-sac, in your apartment building, in your job. So this is bringing liturgy, theology, asceticism, and mysticism into our daily life, or bringing our daily lives into them, whichever direction you want to describe it. I have a little book titled Consecrating the World, and I wanted to publish it under the title Mundane Liturgical Theology, but the publisher said, no, that will never sell. So we call it Consecrating the World, and then I put it in as a subtitle. And the starting point there is from a passage from Paul VI, who says consecrating doesn't mean removing something from the world. It means restoring the world to Christ's reign, Christ's rulership. My life is too mundane. Well, then what do you mean when you pray the Lord's Prayer, your kingdom come? Let it arrive in the church building on 5th and Main on Sunday morning, but I don't expect your kingdom to come into my daily life. Mm-hmm. Really? That's where Christ planned to show up. Your question was a perfect setup. I'll send you your $1 after the interview. My life is too mundane. Yes, this is the sanctification of the secular realm. That's what the laity are called especially to do. That's what Lumen Gentium and Ad Gentis and Apostolicum are all talking about. And it's funny, isn't it? It's a nice tension. Vatican II is talking about the universal call to holiness and placing the baptized lay Christian where he or she is. Wait, which do you want me to do? Yes. Mm-hmm. Call to holiness is here, and it's now.
But I think it could be said by some that suffering the 1,000 pinpricks that come in a day, or suffering the mundane, the doing over and over again, I would rather do the big thing.
Oh, yeah.
I feel I need to be out there and suffer, not necessarily as a way to aggrandize themselves, but because the little things demand so much.
I suppose it's genuinely felt, but I'm also first suspicious of it. I first think that thought comes from the old Adam. Mm-hmm. I think it's a way out. Or, listen, I don't have to accuse anyone else. I can confess myself. It's easy to love mankind. It's human beings that I have my problems with. Yes, so where are you going to practice your asceticism? not sitting in your office reading a book and thinking lofty thoughts about the human race. But when that colleague bugs me in this office meeting, when one more time I have to admit that Elizabeth is right, but I'm too stubborn to do so, overcoming those passions of pride and vainglory and ego and avarice and gluttony and envy and backbiting, tiny little actions, day by day, movement by movement. John Chrysostom has a terrific homily on, I think, Ephesians. I can look it up, but we're talking here, in which he says that the poor that you meet in the city public square, the poor are another altar on which you can make your Eucharistic sacrifice. You're so happy to have been in the church where there's this stone altar that was honored and revered because it bore upon it the body and blood of Christ. Well, here is Christ in the person of the poor. Look how generous God is to you. He's giving you 1,000 chances a day to make another liturgical act, another Eucharistic sacrifice. And just when I think I've satisfied my quota, he sends another one to me. What a good and generous God we have.
Now you're sounding like Saint Teresa of Calcutta.
Yeah, it's a way to daily capacitate ourselves to go back and do our sacramental liturgy with full heart and full throat and full mind and full will, and then be fed so that we can go back into the world and continue our spiritual warfare with the passions and our spiritual service and goodness towards our neighbor. In and out, inhaling and exhaling.
The mystery, can we call it again? It's in, with, and through. It's through, with, and in him. It's right. All around. It's our living out the Paschal mystery. And I think it was you who said that that's what mysticism in a very real way is. It's lived out in the Paschal mystery.
It's a nice serendipity. I've just confessed that I don't have a firm dictionary definition of mystery or mystic or mysticism in mind, and now we look to the Catechism when we find Paschal mystery. My participation in the Paschal mystery is my mystical life. Well, how do I participate in that? In external ceremonial, liturgical, sacramental structures, but also in internal, personal, heart, spiritual, mystical. And in order to do either of them, this capacitation or asceticism struggle against the egotism of the old Adam.
Yeah, the thing is, in even mentioning someone, for example, like Mother Teresa, Saint Teresa of Calcutta, that she, I think, would say, it's not her, that she would say, let me get out of the way. When you go to Europe and you go into these Gothic cathedrals, or you go to Rome and you go to some of the older churches, what you see often is the image of Mary nursing Christ. You don't see that in the United States very much. I don't know if we're uncomfortable with that or whatever that is. But, I'm beginning to see in even my older years now that Mother Teresa was nursed by the church as she feeds Christ, not only who dwells in us, and we're living out that Christ-like life, we need to be nursed by it. So in a very real way, would you say the mystic has to be nursed by the church? I don't know if people will listen to that and go, "Ooh, what does that mean?"
No, that's right. The Mother Church, I said I've been reading in this set of spiritual writers, and they frequently circle back to Mary and ask Mary to assist us. And the Mother Church, Mother Mary, one. Here's a connection that one of them spurred to me. I'm not good with languages, I confess that. But the advantage it gives me is that single words show up to my attention like diamonds. I don't see the whole sentence. I just see these single words. And I love to look up etymologies, original meanings of words. When a word sounds kind of cockeyed in a sentence, I wonder what is the original meaning there that brought the word there. Well, here's the sentence. Canon law, catechism, liturgical documents speak about us assisting at Mass. You assist at Mass. I, a layperson, go to assist at Mass. Oh, what? Are you the cantor today? Are you going to be the usher? Are you taking? No. He's talking about the ordinary person in the pew assists at Mass. And the root of it is from the Latin assistere, which means to stand by, to take a stand near, to attend. I assist at Mass because I go and I stand near the altar, where the priest, because he's ordained, can make this consecration. And the spiritualist tradition describes us standing near the Eucharistic altar as Mary stood near the cross. That's where the strength must come from. You can't leave the cross. You have to stay there at the cross. You have to assist at the crucifixion. Oh, that sounds bad too. It sounds like you're one of the soldiers with a hammer in your hand. To stand nearby, to assist. Well, I want to be an assistant liturgist. I want to stand where Christ does his liturgy of glorifying the Father and sanctifying mankind, including little old me. I want to be an assistant liturgist. I want to stand nearby the way Mary stood near the cross. Christ stands near us. He assists us. But we must go to the place where the heavenly manna is distributed, where the water from the rock flows to us, where the blood and water come from his side. I hope it's not too irreverent to confess the image was that if the water and the blood from the side of Christ on the cross is the sacraments coming to us, we should follow the sacraments to Christ. We should be like salmon swimming upstream into the heart of Christ. That's what our assistance is. That's where we get our assistance. Yes, we're nursed by the church. Christ gives us his body and blood to eat. Your questions make me think of all these little anecdotes which over the course of a semester get dropped in here and there. I think this fits. What we're talking about is in and out, or a respiration of sacrament and sacrifice, receiving and giving. I participate in the sacrifice of the Mass. I assist at the sacrifice of the Mass. There's an article by a French theologian named Philippe Gouillard who describes 4 ways that religions, not just Christianity, not just Judaism, but 4 ways that religion has used food. Food is used in religion. One is the God eats the man. There are religious rituals where you crawl down through a tunnel under the earth and come up inside a cave, and the God has eaten you. The second is the man eats the God. Aztecs baked bread in the image of their God, and they ate it. Man eats in memory of something the God did, or man and the God eat together at the table. Panis means bread. Cum panis means to bread together. Companion, companionship. Well, when I first heard those 4, smart doctoral student I was immediately able to connect 3 of them to the Eucharist. Man eats the God. Is there anything at all in the Eucharist that gives us some sense that we're eating the God? Take and eat. This is my body. Man eats in memory of the God. Anything at all in the Eucharist that can make me think, do this in memory of me? I hope all our listeners are nodding their heads. Anything about eating together, breaking bread together, we're his companion. And isn't it remarkable that the point of the resurrection is that not only Peter, James, and John have a companionship with Jesus, but we still have companionship with Jesus. He breaks bread. Oh, but there's that fourth one still left over. The God eats the man. And I did not understand that one until I became a parent. And we'd been out raking leaves and jumping in them all day. And then we came in and had a bath. And you normally can't get the kid into the tub, but now you can't get him out. And then put him in his new feet pajamas, freshly washed. They didn't smell a pea anymore. And read Goodnight Moon again and tuck him in and put that blanket close around his neck with that binding on it. And you say, oh, I love you so much, I could just... What a strange thing to say to a child just before he falls asleep. I could just eat you up. Nightmares during the night? Is he going to put up a string of cans on his door in case you come in? Why do we say something like, I could just eat you up? I tell my students, I want you to think about this because college prepares you for life. And one day this is going to fall out of your mouth and you might want to know why it happened. Mm-hmm. Well, there's a boundary around the human being called the skin. And there are two ways to trespass that boundary, sex and food. And that's why both of them have been used in mystical imagery. I love you so much I could just eat you up means that I actually would take the other into me. And ever since then, becoming a father and thinking of that, at the Eucharist, not only does the Father in heaven lay himself upon the altar for me to eat, but now my daddy in heaven says, oh, lay yourself on the altar. I love you so much. I could just eat you up. Say, I think we're talking about something mystical here. Mm-hmm. Say, I think that the daily average baptized liturgist is doing something mystical. I think there's a liturgical mysticism going on here. So, Mary feeds us at her breast. Christ feeds us at the breast of his church. We feed Christ ourselves. There's stuff going on back and forth here. This is the mystery.
Yeah, I think of when you were saying that, of times I've gone to daily mass and you see those elders of our community who now have the time, maybe, or maybe always have been, going, but praying there and praying for their grandchildren, praying for the world, praying for things that they wish might have been. Who knows who it is, but they're giving it all on that altar. They're giving it, and he feeds on that. He takes that, doesn't he? I mean, isn't that what it is? Yes. That action, that all that weight, you're giving him all of that. And it is a taking in. It is a consuming, yes, isn't it?
And we can do different kinds of liturgies at different times of our life. And when you're a young person trying to make a career, and when you're a young parent trying to make a family, it's different than at another stage of life. That would make an interesting article or book or a set of books. What would liturgy look like at various stages of life? The grandmother in the rocking chair on the porch praying is supporting the family, the way Moses did when he was on the hill and held his arms up and the battle was being won.
I think that's when we say liturgy has a power, we also say prayer has a power. The mystic we turn to because they seem to have a connection or a power. There's a force, but it's a life-giving force. And maybe that's something that we can break open another time. I think that life-giving force is love.
That would sound like a safe answer. Yes, it would.
We'll return to Pathway to Sacred Mysteries with Dr. David Fagerberg in just a moment. This is Kris McGregor of Discerning Hearts, a nonprofit Catholic apostolate dedicated to evangelization and spiritual formation through the use of new media. Discerning Hearts creates engaging multimedia specializing in audio and video productions which are faithful to the teachings of the Roman Catholic Church and its rich, authentic spiritual tradition. Its mission responds to the Church's call to use the media for evangelization, catechesis, and spiritual renewal. We have made a commitment since the beginning to make the truth shared through Discerning Hearts totally free to users throughout the world. Besides our website, discerninghearts.com, Discerning Hearts has a newly updated free app where users can find all their favorite Discerning Hearts programming, including Father Timothy Gallagher, Dr. Anthony Lillis, Deacon James Keating, Mike Aquilina, Dr. Matthew Bunson, and so many more. There, too, you'll find numerous beautifully produced devotionals and novenas, including the Holy Rosary and Stations of the Cross, to help users create a sacred time for prayer wherever they may be. Discerning Hearts programming can be found on numerous streaming platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, and so many more. Discerning Hearts also has an ever-growing YouTube channel. Discerning Hearts online spiritual retreats and seminars have helped souls in North and South America, Europe, Africa, Australia, the Middle East, and the Philippines. For many people all around the world, Discerning Hearts is a daily source of inspiration, spiritual nourishment, and encouragement. We can only do this thanks to the generous financial support of our friends and benefactors. Please consider donating to our mission today. The world is looking for answers, for spiritual guidance and authentic discernment, for relationship and community. Your support is very much needed and appreciated. Please keep our mission in your prayers and tell a friend about Discerning Hearts. We now return to Pathway to Sacred Mysteries with Dr. David Fagerberg. Why? Why do we do all this? Why liturgy? Why worship? Why are we called to do that?
Chesterton was asked why he became a Catholic, and his answer was because of sin. You and I were chatting about Chesterton off record here a minute ago, so naturally it came to mind, why do we do all this? Because we're sinners and because we have a God who loves us passionately. And so this is what God has done in order to rectify the problem. I think God always had intended to bring us home to him, to let us join the life of God, to enter the perichoresis of the Trinity. It's not like that was plan A, and then after the fall in the Garden of Eden, he moved on to plan B. Redemption is a completion of creation. Creation was the beginning of redemption. So his goal is for our sanctification, our adoption, our deification. And God gets the ball rolling with salvation history. We do our part by synergizing, cooperating. Once I had this short conversation in the hallway, the chair of the department asked if this summer I could teach a course on liturgical history. And I had the following long thought in my head, but it only actually took 1 second, and then I'll get to the end of it. Could I teach a course on liturgical history? Yes, I suppose I could. Where should I start? Probably with Abraham. No, Noah would have to be in there. Well, wait, actually, you'd start with Adam and Eve, and the fall is the forfeiture of their liturgical career. And then the salvation history is a process by which God brings us back to the relationship we should have had with him, but we don't. And it restores our cosmic priesthood until we're made apprentices to Christ, who is the premier liturgist. Now that will be a liturgical history. Oh. Then I realized he just wanted to know if I could give a history of the liturgy. Now for me, that's the flip between a thin and a thick. A thin definition is there's this ceremony, this ritual. For me, that's the part of the iceberg that's visible above the waterline. It's only 1/10, but it's connected to this huge activity of God underneath the waterline. And so liturgical history is more than a history of the liturgy, like the church is more than the Jesus Club, like an icon is more than a picture, like a homily is more than simple instruction, like scripture is more than history, like symbol is more than sign, and like sacrament is more than souvenir. That's why we do it. Not because you must like this sort of thing. I like some fancy pants gewgaws to my religion. To enter into liturgy is to enter into the liturgia, the underground stream of God's salvation history.
It's so much deeper, isn't it?
It is.
And yet we feel it, we put it on the level of ceremony
Mm-hmm.
somehow. And to say that it's ceremony, isn't it the difference between putting clothes on the body and missing the body? I don't know. Maybe that's way too simplistic.
You make me think of clothes on a body or flesh on a skeleton. When the flesh is put on, it's so that the person can move. Or maybe it's putting soul into the body, which keeps you from being a corpse. Liturgy is this life of the Spirit, the life of Christ shared by the Spirit in us. And that then doesn't just affect our standing and sitting in the pews. It affects how we treat our neighbor and how we discipline our passions and the ultimate goal of life. Some author, I swear he wrote it, but now I can't find it anymore, said that worldliness is taking the world without reference to God. Nothing wrong with the world unless you took it without reference to God. And so that's the question. Do we have our eyes on the horizon, on the eternal eschatological horizon? Liturgy, the liturgical stance or posture, is about taking the world with reference to God, our Creator, our Father, our Lover, our Divine Master, to connect the part of the liturgy you can see, the 1/10 above the water line of the iceberg, with the 9/10 underwater, would be to connect cult and cosmos, sacred and profane, church and world. What Jean Corbon calls a ritual liturgy and lived liturgy, a connection between liturgy, theology, and asceticism. So this thing isn't as simple and small and disposable as we think it is. It's cosmic in scale. It has cosmological consequences, and it is eschatological in ambition. It's taking us up to the throne of God, where we will do liturgy all our eternity long. If you don't like doing it now, you're not going to enjoy heaven.
You know, when you were saying that, I couldn't help but see in my mind St. Francis. And he may not have even been in a church, but when he was out in all the creation, he was praising. Mm-hmm. And when he kissed the wounds of the leper, he was praising. He was glorifying. He was giving. Is that, in essence, a part of it? Not all of it, but is that an aspect of that diamond you have spoken of?
I think it is a word that we might introduce to what you just described would be Eucharistia, thanksgiving. This is lived Eucharist. Mm-hmm. The only sin is not being a saint. It's a sin not to find that the cosmos is made for Eucharist, for thanksgiving to God. It's raw material for Eucharist. Well, that's not only what happens in the sacred realm, in the cult, in the ceremony, above the waterline. It's what happens to your life long. Oh, so why do we need the cult? Why do we need the sacramental liturgy? If we've got the world, I could just sleep in and notice the sunrise on the golf course, and I'll say, thanks, God, and then everything will be fine. Mm-hmm. Well, there's that pesky problem of sin again. We need the supernatural forgiveness that's bestowed in the sacraments, the infusion of the gifts of the Spirit, faith, hope, and love in baptism, in order to awaken this new life, to instill this new life in us. So I can do the world the way it was meant to be done if the cataracts of sin on my eyes were taken care of. And that's the rhythm for me between going into the cultic sacramental liturgy and coming back out into the cosmic personal liturgy. Then my life becomes Eucharistic, but it becomes that because I am assisting at the Mass. I'm standing near. I'm standing by the cross. So people like to grab those Christians like St. Francis who kind of rubber stamp their idea of getting close to God in nature, but have they really dealt with the problem of sin with the interior? I sometimes say that Americans like spirituality because it has no shape, no structure, no force to it. For most Americans, the idea of spirituality has the texture of a jellyfish. Asceticism is vertebrate spirituality. It has a backbone. There's a discipline to it. It has a sacramental, grace-filled component to it. So this is different from just the self-help books on the spiritual shelf in the bookstore. This is what the saints are up to in the desert, and when Francis comes across a leper, and when Mother Teresa comes across a dying person in the street, and when a mother comes across her child who needs compassion, when a father, okay, you get the point. It carries itself out into the world. That maybe is the big question that your work tries to address, is how the churchy stuff relates to life stuff.
We'll continue our conversation with Dr. Fagerberg in our next episode. You've been listening to Pathway to Sacred Mysteries with Dr. David Fagerberg. To hear and or to download this conversation, along with hundreds of other spiritual formation programs, visit discerninghearts.com, or you can find it within the free Discerning Hearts app. This has been a production of Discerning Hearts. I'm your host, Kris McGregor. We hope that if this has been helpful for you, that you will first pray for our mission. And if you feel us worthy, consider a charitable donation, which is fully tax deductible, to help support our efforts. But most of all, we hope that you will tell a friend about discerninghearts.com and join us next time for Pathway to Sacred Mysteries with Dr. David Fagerberg.